Ole Miss fans are eagerly awaiting to see just how the NCAA will put the screws to Ole Miss yet again.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the number one most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former staff member at Ole Miss. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now it's the number one sports podcast network in the entire country. On today's show, we're going to break down everything Ole Miss fans need to be watching for as the Rebels take on the Green Wave and Pete Golding's first game as Ole Miss head coach. We'll also dive into why Ole Miss holding an advantage on the lines of scrimmage against Tulane is not an insignificant detail. And we'll tell you what that tells us about how this matchup is being viewed currently. But first, we'll start with Trinidad Chambliss and his pending waiver. That's right, that shiver down your spine. Anytime Ole Miss needs the NCAA from anything, there's always going to be a little bit of nerves. Anytime the NCAA gets involved, Ole Miss fans understandably brace for the worst out of Indianapolis. This time, though, the Rebels may have one of the strongest and most compelling stories in the entire sport that desperately needs great stories. We'll explain why this situation feels different and why it matters beyond just one player. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Reminder, we are free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to our insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. That's right, everybody. That shiver that you feel is because Ole Miss is once again reliant on the NCAA to make some sort of a decision. And the Ole Miss fan base is bracing for that decision to go the wrong way because if we're going to be honest about it, the NCAA has a nice history of putting the screws to Ole Miss over the years. Everybody remember Jarrell Poe and how it took like 3 years to get him into college to begin with. Jeremiah Masoli, you needed a waiver for the transfer to transfer to Ole Miss. I think he got the waiver like the Friday before the Jacksonville State game, and we all remember how that game went. Not to mention probations and everything else. Ole Miss's interactions with the NCAA is not favorable. Nobody could say that it is. And whenever somebody says, no, the NCAA is not out to get you, yes, then why does this keep happening to Ole Miss while programs like Michigan and Alabama and all of those guys get away with absolutely everything? That's because this is on purpose. The old joke where in Kentucky basketball pissed off the NCAA so much that they put Cleveland State on an additional 3 years of probation. There is more than a kernel of truth when it comes to stuff like that. But there is a difference this time because Trinidad Chambliss is trying to get his 6th year of eligibility. The transfer from Division II Ferris State. He finished 8th in the Heisman Trophy this year. He's been absolutely and utterly fantastic for Ole Miss as it goes. And he is just applying for a medical hardship waiver. This is not a situation like Diego Pavia when everybody talks about that, or the fact that he's coming from Division II to Ole Miss. No, all of those complexities don't exist. This is a simple medical hardship waiver. The old 6th year senior, you remember those way back in the day? That's all this is. The same thing that we've done for 50 years. The difference is they are coming from a lower classification and maybe the paperwork is a little bit weird. But this is what I know about this particular waiver situation. I think this is more cut and dry than is being let on. Now, the NCAA could absolutely screw Ole Miss. I get that. But Trinidad Chambliss, he redshirted in 2021. 2022 is the year in question. 2023 and 2024, he played as normal, and this was his 5th year after the redshirt. That 2022 year is what they're trying to get replaced. He played 2 games that season, and they're playing for a medical hardship redshirt. Now, in the Valdosta State Ferris State National Championship game that is on YouTube, the announcer started giving the timeline of Trinidad Chambliss and what his future and past looked like. And he mentioned, hey, he redshirted in 2021. He's going to get a medical redshirt, just a matter of fact, in 2022. He played in 2023, played in 2024, and then obviously transferred to Ole Miss. That was fed to the broadcasters, I guarantee you, by the Ferris State people, which means they were going to do it. Even before he transferred away, this was going to get applied for as a waiver. When he got to Ole Miss, they immediately started doing all the articles coming to Ole Miss referred to him having 2 years of eligibility instead of 1. Remember, the Ferris State people were talking all about that. So the additional year was just a matter of fact to the people in Michigan when he came to Ole Miss. And now Ole Miss is going through the process, and at any day, they're expecting a decision. The NCAA is a corrupt organization that says they look out for the student athlete's best interest. Trinidad Chambliss's best interest is to stay and get that extra year at Ole Miss. And in an era where TJ Finley is on like his 7th school in 8 years or something like that, Diego Pavia suing to get an extra year of eligibility. A simple 6-year redshirt for Trinidad Chambliss makes all the sense in the world. There's almost no reason why you could say no to that while looking at these other examples that are happening. Now, if the NCAA does do that, I have it on decent authority that there's going to be a lawsuit immediately afterwards, and they're going to go down the road towards what Diego Pavia did. But it shouldn't have to get there because Trinidad Chambliss kind of earned the right to paint with his own brush at Ole Miss. He had 2 years of eligibility. It was a cut and dry thing. This wasn't a planned thing. He came to Ole Miss as a backup quarterback. Now, once he blew up, yes, it would be very lucrative for him to stay in Oxford, Mississippi. So my thing to the NCAA is do not derail this young man's career that honestly deserves this. He's done everything right. He is one of the best stories in all of college football this year. And you're an industry with the NCAA that needs good stories. You need people to talk about, oh, he's coming back. You want them to talk about the D2 to D1, the NCAA D2 playoffs for the Ole Miss college football playoffs, for the chance to be an effective player to move up classifications. It's going to make D2 look better. It's going to make D1 look better. It has everything you need. The point is, do not derail this young man's career because you just simply can. We all know that eligibility is a myth. That's the reason you have 8th and 9th year seniors. You can't have one COVID year and all of a sudden go to a 6-year senior being a rarity to having 9th year seniors. My Simpson County math would tell me that that is more than 1 year. So that tells me that eligibility is a myth, and it's all a way to kind of finagle and put your thumb on the scales. Trinidad Chambliss deserves this 6th year at Ole Miss. Because if you want to look at it, Trinidad Chambliss finished 8th in the Heisman Trophy balloting this year after playing only 10 games. And that is without the school or the head coach promoting him one single little bit over that course of time. Think about if the effort behind this player, what this story could become if he came back for another year. If the NCAA was nice enough to grant that year of eligibility. Think about what he could do. I mean, look at his statistics this season. He's 218 for 333, 3,016 yards with 18 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Not bad for a D2 quarterback. Not bad for a chance to lead Ole Miss into one of the greatest games in the state of Mississippi's history, maybe the greatest game. And listen, in this historic moment, this playoff moment where everything's going to happen in Oxford. Trinidad Chambliss also has the major advantage in the playoffs of being somebody that is from Michigan. He can handle the cold weather. He's played cold games before. He's played at a school that didn't necessarily have an indoor facility either. Trinidad Chambliss has a chance to be something that nobody else in the playoffs has, and that is a quarterback with national championship experience. I don't care about the classification. That is a big thing. And this is all stories that the NCAA could be banking. They could be banking that for next year. They could be playing off this playoff run with Tulane and then Georgia and maybe Ohio State and potentially Indiana after that. This is a big deal for Trinidad Chambliss. The NCAA needs to realize that and just take your thumb off the scales, grant him the year of eligibility that he has earned and deserves, and let's just go play some football. Let's start having some good press for once. Let's let even Ole Miss fans think that you are not, as an NCAA, out to get them. If you can do that, hey, all the benefit goes to you. Seriously. Listen, Ole Miss has the advantage of both lines of scrimmage in this game and is facing a Tulane defense that is ranked outside of the top 100 against the pass. That is the formula for how the Rebels win this game. We break all of that down next. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. What makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting is this. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is the best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover, or you missed fourth down conversion or something like that. Ole Miss currently is a 17.5-point favorite over the Tulane Green Wave in Saturday's game. But even if that line scares you, FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Players' props update as guys heat up. You can bet the next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So do you want to be right in the middle of the action this season? Visit FanDuel and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast in whichever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this for free. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast in America. That's all you. Thank you very much for that. And you already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Ole Miss with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 per month or $50 per year. Go to lockedonolemess.supercast.com or check the link down in the show notes to learn more. Heck, with Christmas coming up, there's worse subscriptions that you could get for somebody than the Everydayer Club. Seriously. All right. Turning our attention to the playoff game that is coming up Saturday, we're going to give you our keys to the game, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to be watching for as well. This is a very simple game. This is a game that we broke down the keys for. Jake Retzlaff is a really great runner of the football. Ole Miss did a decent job taking away the pass game. I think Tulane's going to be a little bit better. We will give my prediction a little bit later on in the week, but I don't know if Ole Miss is going to cover the 17.5, but I do think Ole Miss is going to win the game fairly comfortably. So you have that right now. The keys to this game are simple. This is one of those games you need to start fast. You need to be a front runner, because the longer this game goes and the tighter it gets later in the game, the tighter the team is going to become. Eliminating hope for Tulane is going to be absolutely massive this weekend. All they know is they got beat 45-10 last time. You need to jump on Tulane to where the feeling of here we go again, especially with John Sumrall heading out to Florida, that kind of starts to permeate. A fast start in this game is going to be absolutely key for Ole Miss. You can't afford to necessarily fall behind because, like I said, the closer the game is, the more that Tulane is able to stay in it. If it's a fourth quarter game, Ole Miss is going to get pretty tight because that's what it is. Ole Miss is a 17.5-point favorite. The longer it goes on being inside that number, the tighter they're going to become. Also, run the football and stop the run. That's going to be the calling card for beating Tulane on Saturday. Kewan Lacey had about 70 yards rushing the first time these two teams met. That wasn't the Kewan Lacey that kind of is the running back later on in the season. Good running back, but Tulane did a decent job tackling. And Tulane also did a decent job running the football a little bit, but it was problematic from time to time. They tried to do it. Ole Miss was still in their drop 8 mode that they kept trying to do over and over, that eventually Georgia just destroyed that. Ole Miss hasn't been doing that of recent note. And this is going to be the first game that Pete Golding is in charge. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And this is a no go for it on fourth down game. Anywhere. 3 points are as good as a touchdown this week. Play clean. No turnovers, no penalties, no missed fourth down opportunities. If you avoid those 3 things, you are going to win the football game because you have a better football team than the Tulane Green Wave. Don't give them an opportunity. I talked to Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football for a show that aired yesterday afternoon on this channel. And he talked about how there's a difference between takeaways and giveaways. Takeaway is a defensive back making a one-handed grab, making an unbelievable play to get the ball. It wasn't anything at fault by the offensive team necessarily. It was just a great play by the defense. A giveaway is like a fumbled snap or the running back unforced error, fumble in the backfield, something like that. You need to avoid the giveaways in this game. You don't want to help Tulane. You don't want to give them short fields. They're a good team. They're a good team, but you want to make them drive the ball. They've had trouble in the red zone for a good portion of this season. You need to make sure that that continues. And by bowing up on the run, that allows you to rush the passer that can turn Suntarine Perkins, Prince Will, Amon Mielen, those guys loose on the Tulane quarterback, Jake Retzlaff. So that's going to be a pretty big deal potentially for Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss has a weapon in the kicking game, both punting and field goal kicking. I think that Patrick Durkin is going to be a really good kicker for Tulane. And in the kick game, it is literally going to be, in my opinion, who can make the 75-yard drives consistently. When you have the touchback in the end zone, something like that, who can go 75 yards? And I trust Ole Miss to make those plays if we're going to be real about it. I trust Ole Miss over Tulane. Now, this uniform matchup, by the way, going to be absolutely gorgeous. It was gorgeous the first time they met in late September. It's going to be gorgeous on Saturday as well. If you remember, Ole Miss wore the navy helmets, navy jersey, and gray pants. Tulane wore green, white, green. I think Tulane might go Stormtrooper in this game. We'll have to wait and see what the uniform reveal is either tonight or tomorrow, but I think that might be the direction they go. And I expect to see the Angry Wave, an influence of heavy powder, baby blue, whatever you want to call, and Ole Miss going with the Navy. It's going to look gorgeous. And the Ole Miss football staff, they're going apparently all out for this game. Trace Atkins for the national anthem. That's a pretty big get for the national anthem, if we're going to be completely honest about it. You go through that. I've heard helicopter fly over. I've heard drone show, laser show. They're going to be handing out Santa hats and all of that. The fourth quarter has a chance to be nuts. Now, up until about 4:00 in the afternoon, it's not going to be nuts, but it's going to be nuts as the sun starts to go down. It's going to look very beautiful of what's happening. It's going to be a stripe out. So if you're watching this, look and see the corresponding color with the section that you are going to be sitting in. So we'll see. Locked On Ole Miss will be at the Tampa Bay Rebel Club watch party at the Beef O'Brady's on West Himes Avenue. and they have drink specials and all of that stuff. We're going to have a good time. There's going to be a lot of Rebels, and there's going to be Rebels all over the country. I know Birmingham Rebel Club, pretty much everywhere there's a big city, they're having a watch party. I'm just not at those. But so I'm going to talk about the Tampa Bay Rebel Club watch party because I will be at that one. So it should be a whole lot of fun, and I'm interested to see exactly where this goes for watch parties at Ole Miss. Everybody celebrating this event. Listen, in our final segment, Pete Golding is going to make his debut in the biggest game that Ole Miss has ever had. And that alone is worth noting. But what really matters is what you need to watch for in this playoff matchup against Tulane. We'll break all that down next. The holidays are here, and whether or not you're hosting the family or planning the perfect gift or just trying to keep things simple and delicious, Omaha Steaks is making it easier than ever. From effortless holiday entertaining to unforgettable gifts, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience straight to your door. And what makes it even better, with Omaha Steaks, you always know exactly what you're getting. USDA certified tender steaks, premium proteins, gourmet sides, decadent desserts that make anyone feel appreciated. I've sent Omaha Steaks as gifts before, and the reaction has always been the same. It is the best gift ever. I love how easy it is to gift. It shows up frozen, packed beautifully, and ready to cook. Save big on gourmet gifts and the holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com, and for an extra $35 off, use the code COLLEGE at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. And it's going to be interesting because this will be Pete Golding's first game as Ole Miss head coach, and it will be a playoff contest. I guarantee you that is a record that will not be broken in the college football playoff anytime soon. It's hard to believe that we're in that situation, but we are. Pete Golding will absolutely start his coaching career as a head coach in the college football playoff, and one can be thankful that he spent 5.5 years at Alabama, like he said in the press conference on Monday. One can be thankful about his experience going in the playoffs repeatedly, his paying attention to Nick Saban and what happened, going up and down and all of that. The stories he starts talking about with Jalen and Tua and quarterbacks and the references that he has a chance to go back to. I expect Pete to be absolutely fine in this game. He's absolutely destroyed everything that has come in his path through his first 2 weeks. Why wouldn't doing the thing that he's been essentially doing for his whole life be any different? He's somebody that is a high performer. And as our friend Nick Saban says, low performing people hate high performing people because they can't get to that level. And high performing people hate low performing people because they can't make it to that level. And Nick Saban wouldn't have hired Pete Golding if he didn't view him as a high performing person. So really interesting stuff. Now, Ole Miss running for 200 yards in this game is kind of going to tell the story, because we talked about how Kewan Lacey ran for like 69 yards, 70 yards the first time they matched up. Trinidad Chambliss ran for like 110 or something like that. But 200 yards rushing for the game, that's going to tell the story. Also, Ole Miss has the advantage on the offensive and defensive line in this game. And there are not many matchups to where teams that don't have the advantage on the offensive and defensive line wins the game. It's going to take Jake Retzloff going completely off. It's going to take Ole Miss turning the ball over. They're playing sloppily on offense, which is possible. Ole Miss has played one football game in 6 weeks. It's almost like a bowl break that has happened for Ole Miss. So they're going to have to get right and get things going in the right direction. But Tulane's going through kind of honestly, the exact same type situation. But the advantage on the offensive and defensive line, if Ole Miss shows up and decides they're going to play physical, there's not going to be a lot that Tulane can do. And how will Ole Miss look offensively will be the main story in this game, regardless of result. If Ole Miss plays poorly offensively, they're going to say, okay, that's because Lane Kiffin wasn't there. Lane Kiffin was everything with this offense. Lane Kiffin this, Lane Kiffin that. If Ole Miss plays well offensively, it's going to be, well, Ole Miss did this in spite of Lane Kiffin. It's going to be the story. Get used to that. And Ole Miss has the ability to go completely off if we're going to be completely real about this. And Trinidad Chambliss, the next game that Trinidad Chambliss loses, we talked about the first segment about how the NCAA could screw Trinidad Chambliss. And the next game that he loses could be his last game ever playing college football because you're waiting on a waiver that may or may not come. So Trinidad's preparing as if every game is the last game until he hears otherwise. I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing. Will Trinidad press? He hasn't done it to this point, and he's been an excellent quarterback for Ole Miss over this process. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how that goes. I kind of hope there's no waiver news that happens before the first playoff game and the waiver comes in between the two, if that makes sense. And if that happens, Ole Miss is going to be in good shape. But that is my thoughts. I think Ole Miss is going to win the game fairly comfortably. I'll give you my score a little bit later on in the week, but I think Ole Miss is exactly where they want to be. And we'll see if they can pull through and make it to the Georgia game in the Sugar Bowl. Thanks for tuning in today on Locked On Ole Miss. We continued to talk about Ole Miss versus Tulane all week, so make sure you subscribe and follow the show so you can get all the latest episodes. We're on all of the social channels, so check those out as well. And did Locked On Ole Miss make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media and secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we will drop you the code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite shows ad-free and get exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you check out a second listen in Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. We are right there, y'all. The biggest college football game in Mississippi history, just days away, just hours away. Howdy toddy, everybody.